welcome to Battle Streams of Middle-earth, and welcome to Shedfest 2025 Part 2. Oh yes, this is the second part in the story of how I built my display board for Throne of Skulls. And as we left it last time, there was a week to go until the event, and I was about to have a very special weekend with Michael Haskell. So if it sounds like your cup of tea, come on in and let's see what happened.
One ring to rule them all, one ring to fight them, one ring to break them all, and let the darkness bind them.
This tale grew in the telling. Those words are the opening words of The Lord of the Rings. They're the start of the prologue, and they are how J.R.R. Tolkien described the process of how the telling of The Lord of the Rings grew beyond anything else he could have imagined. It's also the quote that Peter Jackson used to describe how the development of the Hobbit films went from 2 films into 3. And it is also now the term that I will borrow to describe the way that Shedfest 2024 has expanded from a 2-part series into a 3-part series. Oh yes, welcome to Battle Streams of Middle-earth. So yes, and welcome to my latest vlog. I believe this is hobby vlog number 43, and I think it's the Road to Throne of Skulls 6, Project Shire 10, I believe. It's an exciting set of numbers to keep track on, but this is indeed the latest step in my journey towards Throne of Skulls. If you are new to the channel, welcome. The point of Battle Streams of Middle-earth tea is to help the wonderful SPG hobbyists of the world clear our backlogs. We set up this channel to try and really help people embrace the joy of the hobby and to work through those wonderful piles of potential they all have. We do that in 2 ways. The first of those is that we have a regular live stream every 2 or 3 weeks where we take a look down memory lane and we have a look at an issue of D.X. Steeney's part work, Battle Games in Middle-earth, and we all paint along to a theme, and we pick whatever comes with the issue. So we've got one coming up with Legolas in it, and we will all hang out together and we'll all paint Legolas, not because we want Legolas, just because it's fun to hang out together and paint. So if you fancy that, you can get a complete back history of those streams over on a live tab. But the other way I try and clear my own backlog is by charting my own hobby journey in these hobby vlogs. And as regular viewers will know, I am currently way deep within my favourite project of the year, and a lot of our viewers' favourite project of the year, and that is, of course, my journey to Throne of Skulls, my favourite event of the year. So, as I said, this is part 6 of the Road to Throne of Skulls, so you may well want to go back and kind of catch up. But certainly, make sure you watch the last video, which is the first part in how I made my display board. This is continuing that journey of how I made the display board and covering the last few weeks before Throne of Skulls. And yes, a tale that grew in the telling. This is quite the epic. I always love to document these things. I like having these things to look back on. I genuinely do. But there's so much stuff. There's so much footage for this kind of thing, and maybe more than ever before this time. And as I started working my way through it became pretty good. I originally envisaged that the display board video would be 1 vlog, and then as I started working through all the stuff you've already seen, I was like, no, it has to be 2. It has to be 2, and they're probably going to be about an hour and a half each. And so I got the first part out, and then as I was working on this second part, as it were, it was just ballooning again with all the content and all the scripting and everything that had to kind of to tell the story in full. And so it became pretty clear that the video would actually be about 2 hours long. And so I've made the decision to cut it again. I've made the decision to do another part. Now I know you guys like long videos to listen to and to watch along to while you're painting, so I don't think it'll be a problem. But I hope this comes as good news and welcome news that you'll get more content. You get an extra hobby vlog looking at this Throne of Skulls stuff. And so yeah, I've done what Peter Jackson did with The Hobbit, and I've kind of had to go, okay, well now I don't have an ending for part 2, so I'll have to make an ending and I'll have to make a beginning for part 3. But of course, the only way to do that is to insert a giant CGI dragon chase in the middle of it. So you can all look forward to that at the end of this vlog. but yes, so that's where we are basically. We're continuing that journey, and I think it's important to say, kind of catch up on where we were, because at the end of the last vlog, whoa, what a cliffhanger, right? What a cliffhanger! I was on the Friday before the event. I had a week to go, and I was in dire straits. And what happened? Ding dong! Michael Haskell arrived. However, not to ruin it for anyone or upset anyone, of course that isn't how it arrived. Wouldn't you know it? When Michael turned up at my house, I did know he was coming, and I wasn't outside filming his finger press the doorbell. So, do you know, I hate to break it to you, but some of the things you will see on YouTube will be false. So yes, but how did Michael end up here? I think I mentioned in the last vlog, we had a little Throne of Skull support group for the months leading up to the project. Just kind of hanging out together, chatting, maybe do some hobby hangouts, sending ideas, sharing ideas and all that sort of stuff. And Michael was in there. And Michael made the mistake about 2 or 3 weeks before the event, of saying I finished. He'd finished his wonderful project, his wonderful Road to Rivendell board, and he was like, oh, I'm finished. And I jokingly typed back on that group, well, if you're finished, the hell are you doing? Get in your car and come down here and help me. Ha ha ha, much hilarity, I said. But Michael, being the absolute spectacular gent that he is, then reached out to me and said, do you know what? I'm free next weekend. I think he said, I don't want to impose, but if you're serious about this, I could come down. And I kind of went, oh yeah, that'd be awesome. And I was like, beyond anything else, Michael's a very good friend of mine. I was like, well, it'd just be cool to see you and to hang out. But also I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know what you'll do. I don't know what bit you'll do. And I was very much kind of like, it'll be great to have a pair of hands, but you can't paint my hobbits. You can't paint my army for me. You have to be there. You know, my own moral codes. Like, you have to be kind of helping me do other bits, not doing it for me, as it were. But I was like, and who knows, maybe you'll be cooking us dinner and looking after the kids while I do the hobby projects. But he was like, yeah, whatever. He was just like, yeah, whatever I could do, I'd love to come down. So yeah, we arranged it, and Michael came to stay, and he turned up on the Friday night, so a full week before Throne of Skulls. Michael turned up, and this vlog is basically the story of that weekend. You might be amazed to look at it, because I reckon if you're looking at it, this vlog is probably just under an hour, and it basically covers 2 days. A little bit of Friday, but mainly Saturday and Sunday. It's like, what? But it turns out we did a lot on Saturday and Sunday, and there was an awful lot of development on the project over the course of that weekend. So I hope you enjoy kind of watching that and seeing what we did and so on and so forth. And I just wanted to, you know, so thoroughly document what was an incredible weekend with Michael, where he kind of saved the project. You'll hear me saying that a bunch of times throughout this, but he really did, and you'll see in this vlog the kind of stuff that Michael did and to help with the project, and it wouldn't have been possible without him. So it's a lot of fun. I'm glad that we've got Michael Fest 2024 to kind of to look back on. It's gonna be really good fun. So, where were we? If we fast forward to the end of the, or rewind I should say, to the end of the last vlog, I had put the expanding foam on the dragon. I think that was the last clip that we had. The foam had been put on, I'd kind of cut it down a bit, I'd sanded it down, carved it down, and I was really happy with it. I had this kind of smoke effect on the dragon firework. And the next stage was to paint it black. To be a base coat. So Michael turned up on Friday, and we set to trying to paint it back. The two of us were painting it. And essentially we instantly hit a disaster, which was the black paint just wouldn't take on the expanding foam. It was interesting that wherever I'd carved it or cut it, the inside of the foam would take the paint, but the outside coating wouldn't. It just, you know, it did that sort of thing that you almost like painting over sellotape. You know, it just was going thin. It just wasn't settling. And you know, we mucked around 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, something like that, and it just wouldn't take it. And we couldn't make it work. And so we had two options really. One was to kind of carve or sand the entire dragon, which take an awful lot of time, might make it look worse, and might not be 100% effective, or give it a primer. And so we went with the primer. I ran down to the garage, to the shed. Sorry, bit of shed content, and I found my trusty massive tub of textured ceiling paint, which is an old B-Sime Classic, an old Battle Games in Middle-earth Classic, and the sort of thing I used to slap over scenery when I was a kid. And we basically spent Friday night coating the thing in this kind of thick paint. We covered the whole thing in it, to then use that as a primer to put the black on. So that was our first project. That was our first project when Michael arrived. Basically, we spent Friday evening whacking that stuff over it, getting on and covering it all in the hope that the black paint would go down. So that was really good and really encouraging. But there was no denying the fact that at the end of Friday, the dragon was ready to be painted black. And at the start of Friday, the dragon had been ready to be painted black. So effectively, this one day had achieved nothing. Like we'd come no further. Basically, we just kind of re-primed it, and so that's where our vlog picks up. We're gonna jump in and find us on Saturday morning, beginning to prime that. So there we go. That's what this vlog is going to be looking at. It's going to go over the next 2 days. And if you do enjoy it, please drop me a comment down below. These vlogs take, I like having them to look back on, but they take so much effort to film and script and edit. And every little comment down there I really do appreciate. It really does encourage me to keep going. So if you are enjoying what we're doing here in the story, just let us know. Let us know what you think of the project and the vlog and all that. It's always really good to hear from you all. So there we go. Click the subscribe button if you haven't done already, and I hope you enjoy Shedfest Part 2, the Michael Fest, should we call it. And fear not, hopefully before too long, Shedfest Part 3 will be coming as well. So we're catching up, we're getting there, and I hope you enjoy the vlog. See you soon. The first job for Saturday morning was to paint the central firework dragon black, and we all got involved. And I do mean all got involved. This was a lot of fun, and it was nice to be able to involve the kids in part of the project. After all, who doesn't enjoy splashing black paint around fairly haphazardly while watching your dad sob? As fun as it was, it took ages to get a really even coat over the whole dragon. I mean, several hours, the whole morning. And it was only at about 2 PM that we were finished and finally able to move on to the next stage. With the dragon drying, we had a huge task on our hands. I had bought 3 sets of lights to use for the main firework dragon: orange, red, and warm white. Now, whilst in theory I could have wrapped each set around the dragon on its own, I thought it would be a nightmare to thread 3 separate long leads around the dragon, and I also thought it would look rubbish having 3 sets of leads passing back and forth across the dragon. So I came up with the idea of braiding the 3 sets together to make one uber set of red and orange and white lights. Can you braid LEDs? I don't know, but we were about to find out. Before we started, I did come up with one handy hack, as I realised it would be easier to braid 2 sets of the LEDs together first, and then braid that doubled up set with the 3rd set, rather than trying to do a true braid of all 3 at the same time. However, even then, this was a big task, and, not for the last time over the weekend, I realised I wouldn't have been able to get it done without Michael. The LED chains were over 16 feet long each, and just to braid 2 together was a huge process. We ultimately found that 2 people weren't enough to move the threads over one another, and so my oldest daughter Charlotte was co-opted into helping as well. This was an incredibly surreal experience, braiding LEDs along to the shouts of red over, white over, red over, white over, etc., like some kind of flashing Les Mis chain gang. It ultimately took about an hour to do both braids, but as seemed to be happening a fair bit on this project, despite the madness, it worked. And by the end of the process, we had one long chain with 3 sets of LEDs combined together. By this point, the black paint on the dragon had dried, so we sat down and tried to figure out the best way forwards. Okay, so it's update time, and it is now Saturday afternoon, and it is black! It is painted black. Yes, I think, I seem to remember the last clip we didn't actually talk about the textured paint. I don't think I showed you it with the textured paint before it was painted black, but after carving the foam and being very happy with it, the foam wouldn't take paint well at all. So we had an emergency, what did you describe it as, Plan Z?
The Plan Z, yes.
A crisis meeting, and covered the entire thing in textured paint, which took a while, and that was Friday night. And that then meant we couldn't actually paint it black until Saturday morning. So we then painted it black with myself and Michael and Charlotte and Olivia all helping. And it was between 2 and 3 hours, wasn't it? It took a long time to paint black. It's a horrible, horrible thing. And I'm literally sitting here staring at it. I can see all the little white spots that we hope you won't be able to see in a minute. So it took a very, very long time to paint it black. But that's now our base coat. It's shaded. And we are now going to start a hopefully incredibly transformative series of dry brushes. So the whole thing's going to be dry brushed with a dark grey for the benefit. It's currently looking like smoke, hopefully. So the whole thing will be dry brushed dark grey. And then we're going to dry brush the top of it in a series of bright colours, like quite heavily, I think is the plan. So the shape of so not this necessarily, but the shape of the dragon will start to come to life with a heavy dry brush of red, then orange, then yellow. Yeah?
Yeah.
We think?
Yeah.
And then once that's done, we start adding cotton wool smoke, we start adding lights, and we hope for the best. So yeah, you said just a minute ago you thought it was looking good.
Yes, so just sitting across over there,
far away,
looking along at it, and I just thought, no, it was the way the angle is. It is how the dragon comes in the film. The firework dragon sort of, as it sort of manoeuvres into the hobbits that suddenly take fright, and I just think it captures that. And I think if we get the right combination of the colours with the lights, with the smoke effect, I think it's going to look really, really cool.
So yeah, that's where we are, and the next job, the afternoon's job, is to just hit this with a whole host of dry brushes, and that's what we're about to get stuck into now. Wish us luck!
And so we got stuck into painting, initially going with the original plan of dry brushing the whole thing grey to try and give the effect of smoke. This certainly wasn't a quick process. The size and shape of the dragon meant that getting around each side of each spine and covering it effectively took a fairly long time. However, by the very nature of dry brushing, it was far, far quicker than the textured paint and black paint layers. We were just about to start thinking about fiery colours and the placement of the lights when the doorbell went and I received another exciting delivery.
Oh yeah! I got some stickers made. So this is quite fun. I started doing this last year. I got some sun stickers made. I've got my tape measure here. So this is my from my War of the Rise of Aemma, Look to the East. Thanks for looking to my coming. You're the best. Throwing Skulls 2023. And I just found these. There's a whole selection of different sun pictures, and they could be customised. I thought it was really cool. It was a really good fun thing, and so I was able to just run around sticking stickers on people, spreading the good word of the Rise of Aemma. And I decided to do the same thing this year, and I was delighted to find they did firework ones. It's obviously no assumption that there'd be customisable stickers for every Middle Earth army you can think of, but I was delighted to find they had stickers, and look how shiny they are. They're so glittery. I like these. They're very on trend, and this time I went for thanks for coming to my party. I'm 11-1 today, Throne of Skulls 2024. So these are cool, and lots of different colours. I've got pink ones, and green ones, and yellow ones, and all that sort of stuff. So super, super pleased with these. Just got them off Amazon. They cost about £5, including the customisation. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. And yeah, really getting quite excited about this now. Everything's coming together.
And so, with the exciting glittery stickers lighting up my life, it was time to plot out where the LED lights would go on the dragon. How's that for a rancid segue? The main reason I wanted to do a test fit was to check that I actually had enough lights to fit around the dragon. Although, if I'm honest, I'm a little unsure of why I did this, because if I didn't have enough, my options would be A, not have enough lights, and B, there was no option B. Anyway, I cut a piece of string that was the same length as the braided lights and threaded the string around the dragon, experimenting with various arrangements until I found one I was happy with. Once I had, I took these photos to use as reference pictures for when I added the real lights later. Next up, we started adding the fiery colours. As I mentioned in the last vlog, my scenery paints are all very natural colours like browns and greys, primarily used for painting rocks, mud and stonework, and greens and blues for foliage and water. I don't have any reds or yellows, so instead I ransacked Charlotte's poster paints. We started dry brushing a bright red onto the dragon, but immediately ran into a problem. The bright red was drying really dark, and far from turning the dragon red, it seemed to just be turning the whole thing a dull brown colour. We continued down this road for a while, adding orange and yellow dry brushes, but it was no good. However bright the colours that we added were, when they were dry brushed over the black base coat, the nature of the paint meant that the model didn't get any brighter, it just became browner and duller. As I came to the conclusion that it wasn't working, I realised that I would have to change tack. I couldn't dry brush red over the black. I was going to need to repaint the whole thing red and start working up the brighter colours from there. After a brief experiment, it became clear that Charlotte's poster paint was still not going to give good coverage over the black undercoat, even when thickly slapped on. I needed to look elsewhere. Given the fact that Michael was only with me for 2 days, and we couldn't make any more progress until the dragon was painted, I was starting to panic about just where I'd find thick, bright red paint in the house, when I was suddenly struck by a wonderful idea that was just so B-Sime. Back in 1999, I had attended the Warhammer Fantasy Grand Tournament at Warhammer World, or Grand Pageant as it was then called. Oh yes, we're going 25 years back in time, people. It's low-res o'clock. 1999 was actually before the castle cladding had been added to Warhammer World, and the gaming hall was basically just a big, empty industrial room. There seemed to be hardly any photos of it in this state on the internet, probably because of the lack of camera phones in 1999, but I did find these two, taken by a guy called Dan Heelan on the Warhammer World Facebook page. You can see the door to Bugman's in the top right, which should help you to get your bearings. 1999 was just after Games Workshop had launched the new Citadel paint range, replacing the wonderful hexagonal flip-top paints with the hideous screw-top paints, which dried up roughly 2 to 3 minutes after you first opened them because the paint got stuck in the screw caps. Thankfully, in a move that the modern Games Workshop would never do, at the Grand Tournament there were huge buckets of the old hexagonal paints that were no longer on sale, all reduced down to 50p each, or 10p each, or £1 each. I honestly haven't got a clue how much they were, but they were dirt cheap and I bought loads of them, essentially meaning that I skipped the whole run of the hideous new paints because I just kept using the glorious older paints. Over the past 25 years, I've gradually worked my way through these paints, finishing most of them, but several of them are still kicking around, especially the washes, and it's genuinely amazing how they're all still absolutely fine and viable, especially considering that every pot of the paint range that replaced them that I ever bought has long been turned into the kind of iron-hard rock that Injun would drill into hoping to find a mosquito. Not only that, but I even had 3 completely unopened pots that had been kept hidden dark and deep, not used, I say, unless at the uttermost end of need. And, as luck would have it, much to my delight, 2 of these 3 pots were blood red and sunburst yellow, absolute classics of the Citadel range. And now my need was great. I say as luck would have it, but I'm not going to lie, finding these paints gave me far more of a feeling of fate or serendipity. Someone was watching over this project and they wanted it to succeed. And so I ripped open the 2 tubs of 25-year-old paint and got cracking. I started with the blood red, painting a fairly rough base coat of bright red all over the dragon. So excited to be painting with the paints of my childhood that I forgot to film any of it. Once that was dry, I hit it overall with a heavy dry brush of sunburst yellow, And as the effect started to emerge, I was far happier with it and thought I was finally on the right track. As I was working away, the daylight was failing and we were still very much behind, so I sent Michael on a quest to the bottom of the garden to spray some balsa wood strips black. I was going to need these sprayed black and dry for later in the night for another part of the process that was still terrifyingly unstarted. Not for the last time, I was incredibly grateful to have Michael as an extra pair of hands. So, whilst Michael was spraying balsa wood outside in the depths of British winter, I was inside, dry brushing the dragon yellow and bathing in the soothing warmth of my central heating. Fingers crossed the universe doesn't hand me a karmic arse kicking for that one in the next vlog. I have to say, I was really pleased with how the dragon was looking at this point. It was now the colour that I had in my head when I was thinking about it, and I hoped that by the time I covered it in some black cotton wool, these colours would give the illusion of the fiery heart of the firework. By this point, Michael had finished prepping the balsa wood outside and was looking disturbingly unbusy, so I treated him to an indoor job, adding a Nuln oil wash to all of the wooden furniture that hadn't been washed and base coated in the previous vlog, namely the tables covered in crockery, their benches and the other tables that would be scattered across the board covered in party paraphernalia. You might be able to see that Michael is painting tables glued to bases with a bench on either side glued in place. This was yet another logistical nightmare with the project that I had to work through. I first decided to glue down all the plates and jugs to the tables rather than painting them separately. This may well have made the process of painting both the tables and the crockery harder, but I thought it would be vastly preferable to try to glue fully painted crockery onto the tables once they were all finished. As for the bases, I was mainly thinking about how hard it would be to hold on to the individual benches and tables while painting them if they weren't glued onto bases. I also knew that I couldn't glue them onto the board before they were painted and subsequently paint them in situ on the board, as it would be all but impossible to get the brush in underneath the tables and benches once they were glued in place. Conversely, I was worried that if I painted the tables fully off the board and then painted the board texture in full, when I tried to glue the tables to the board, the bond would be quite weak and they would likely look uneven and tilty. In the end then, I came up with the idea of gluing each table and pair of benches to a thin base of hardboard, which would allow me to paint the undersides of the tables and benches, whilst also allowing me to glue the hardboard onto the display board completely flat. I could then glue down the base texture on the display board to cover the joints. I knew that I would then be heavily dry brushing the board texture with a few colours that would inevitably get onto the tables, so I decided not to paint the crockery before that stage was complete. Ultimately then, this process was primarily designed to allow the benches to be glued flat, whilst also ensuring there was dark brown paint on the undersides of the tables and benches for when people crouch down and take a model's eye view. Hopefully that ramble makes sense. I think I made the right decision in the end, but once again, I primarily hope it gives some insight into how complicated it was to decide the correct order of operations for so many parts of the project. With the dragon firework now completely painted, the time had come to affix my lights. It might seem quite early in the process to be doing this sort of thing, and lights are normally something I add to the board once all of the messy painting and texturing has been completed. However, given that I would be gluing movement trays, furniture and flock on top of the tunnel where the lights were threaded through, I had to have the lights fully in place before I could begin to glue anything else down to the board. We threaded the lights around the dragon, following the photograph of the string that I'd taken earlier in the day. With the lights in place, I turned them on and, thankfully, was really happy with how they were looking. With the arrangement decided, I superglued the lights in place around the dragon and glued down the foam board cover over the wire tunnel, irrecoverably holding the lights in place. With the lights drying, we were in a really good groove and keen to keep going. It had been a productive Saturday, and we could have really done with ploughing on all Saturday evening. Unfortunately, this was actually the night of episode 106 of Battle Streams in Middle-earth. The episode, of course, with the legendary appearance by Michael. So, rather than spending 5 crucial hours working on the board, I spent 5 hours talking about legacy models with Mark Stone and all of our lovely B-Simers. The stream was great fun as always, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was 5 hours I just could not afford to lose. With the stream done, we crawled to bed, hoping we wouldn't regret the lost time in the morning. As Sunday dawned, the lights were finished and the tunnel cover glued down. It was time to make things even more permanent. Having been experimenting with board layouts for 6 weeks, it was now time to glue everything down. The tree, the movement trays, the tents, the lot. After this, there truly was no turning back, and those lights were never coming out. In truth, this part was really exciting. I got to get all of my painted models out. Remember, at this point, about 13 hobbits and Gandalf still weren't finished, as well as all the movement trays, the tree, the tents, and all the freestanding furniture, which was also a long way from being finished. I've been really looking forward to this stage, and it was a lot of fun. Kind of like playing with a doll's house and moving everything around in situ, figuring out the positions for key hobbit models, and coming up with the final layout, using that picture from the previous vlog as my guide. I once more got too excited and forgot to record most of this process, but after making some inevitable concessions to fit the physical dimensions of the final board, everything was glued down and I was really starting to feel like I had a display board. You can see in this picture of the finished layout that we were using the earlier picture as reference with a printout pinned to the backboard, and when I compare the original plan to the finished board, it really was quite similar. The tatty looking hedges at the back were just placed there to give us an idea of where the hedge would be to ensure that we left space for it. The final hedge will be added later, and I'll be covering how that was created in the next vlog. In the end, I dropped the party tables from 7 down to 6, dropped the big beer barrels from 3 down to 2, dropped one of the market stalls, and rearranged a few of the outer tables based on a bit of a rethink about what I'd be using them for, including putting a table in front of the tent on the far right so that it would be far more visible. You can also see that at this point I was still planning on using at least a couple of the wooden market stall frames, although these would ultimately be dropped from the finished board. It was a shame to lose these few pieces from the board, but we ultimately agreed that it wouldn't have any impact on the overall impact of the display, and on the plus side, it was a few less things to paint. With all of the movement trays, tables and tents glued down, it was time to blend them all together. We mixed up some polyfiller and Michael got stuck in, working across the board to create a smooth surface that I could later glue sand onto ready for paint. Once again, as cool as the board was beginning to look, I couldn't yet shake the nervousness about how permanent everything was becoming. And I can't tell you how many times I counted the movement tray holes to ensure that I had exactly 76 for all the models in the army. With the filler dry, we then added the black cotton wool smoke, carefully wrapping it around the dragon, experimenting with thicker areas and thinner areas, teasing the cotton wool out to create motion trails, etc. And in the end, we decided that, within reason, the more we added the better, and so went with a fairly thick covering, gently teasing it apart around the lights to ensure they would show through the smoke. With that, the dragon firework was complete, and I have to say, was looking pretty great. Talking about looking great, you'll notice that there hasn't been much discussion of my now compulsory Throne of Skulls fancy dress in the vlogs yet, beyond the faintest of hints that it would be, shocker, firework themed. So, the time has come, and I now need to take you way back to the earliest clip I recorded for this whole project when I received a very exciting delivery way back in March 2024 to show just how early I was committing to this project, both financially and emotionally.
Alright, so exciting news, the project is underway and I'm in the past. I don't really know if you'll ever see this clip or what's going to happen, to be honest, but this is the first chronological clip I'm recording for my Throne of Skulls project 2024. It's currently March 2024 and I've just taken a delivery, and as you can see I'm wearing this stylish jacket, and so who knows how future Damian set this up, but this is the start of my journey into the fancy dress for the Throne of Skulls 2024 project, which as of yet the event hasn't even been announced, but yeah, I've made progress. So a little story on this. Again, I might have said, past Damian might have said this, or future Damian might have said this, and I'll have to go back and edit one of these, but who knows. When I was figuring out, as you all know from my Throne of Skulls projects, fancy dress is always a major part of it. I tried to get involved, I tried to dress myself up like a fool, and kind of really engage in the theme. And I was really, really happy last year when I wore this stylish suit when I was the Sun, and the sun was actually part of the display board. I thought that was a fun gimmick of your outfit actually making you part of the display board rather than just being something that's on the display board like Bilbo or Treebeard or something like that, like I've done in the past. And when I was thinking about how to do the fancy dress for this year, I was going to go as old Bilbo. That was always the idea. I was going to wear my Bilbo outfit with a grey haired wig, and so I was young Bilbo for Throne of Skulls when I did Bag End. I was going to be old Bilbo for this one, and fairly simple. And I was chatting to River, who works in Bugman's at Warhammer World last year, when I was the Sun, and she said, "What glittery object are you going as next year?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm going as old Bilbo. He's not really very glittery." And she said, "That's rubbish. You know, based on last year being the Sun, the year before that being the Arkenstone." She's like, "Surely you can do better than that." And I was like, "Well, there's nothing glittery at Bilbo's birthday party." And River said, "Aren't there fireworks?" And I said, "Yes." And that was the kind of missing piece in the whole thing. I was like, "Oh my god, yeah, that's it. I'm going to go as a firework. I'm going to go as fireworks." And then what? And then suddenly I was like, if I look like a firework display, I hold the board, I'm behind it, and I'm part of the board again. And it just felt so super, super cool. So I was like, right, that was the plan. Costume sorted. Let's go and work it out. And so when I was thinking about how to do that, my first thought, when I got back from Throne of Skulls in December this year, was, okay, well, I've got a cloud suit here. I wonder if there's a fireworks suit. That would be a strong start. And with a bit of Googling around the same company that makes these fantastic suits, I found that there was indeed a fireworks suit, as it's called, made by Suitmeister. And with some Googling around, the only place I could find it was a website called HalloweenCostumes.co.uk. And so I was like, oh, okay. And it's it's was it on there large, 60 quid. So it cost £60. And I was like, well, I'm committed. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna go. And then I just, there was something about the website that just made me a bit twitchy. And I did some Googling, and all the reviews for HalloweenCostumes.co.uk were dreadful. They just said they were terrible. They said they're not in the UK, they're in the US, but they've registered a .co.uk address. And then loads of reviews from people saying, well, I haven't, I didn't get what I wanted, or it never turned up, and they never refunded my money and all that. And obviously I was a bit twitchy, and it's, £60, a lot of money. I was like, oh, but it's nowhere else. Like this suit is stored and stocked nowhere else in the country. I think it's like only an American thing, which explains why only a kind of American UK front company can stock it. But there's nowhere else that I could get it, and I was really at my wit's end. And I just thought, I tell you what, I'll take a punt. I'll search eBay, and I went onto eBay, and there was one copy of this suit in my size, the large size. It's probably been worn before, I guess. I think it's second hand, like on a mannequin in America. And I was like, "Are you kidding?" From a seller with really good feedback. So I was like, "This is incredible. This is fate." And so I was like, "That's it. That's my that's kind of my decision made. I'm going to get it from them. I'm going to get it shipped over." And it was about the same cost. With shipping involved, it was about the same cost anyway, without any of the risk. So I ordered the suit, and it has turned up. So I thought we'd have a look inside and see what treats are awaiting us this year. Oh yeah. Look at that bad boy. Whoa. How about that? So, excuse me, clouds. You are so 2023. And instead, We now have Alice. How about that? So I am over the moon, frankly. Stylish trousers as well. It's great, it fits great, it's in good condition. I am absolutely delighted. So massive, massive thank you to Androhip on eBay, who I got this off and got it shipped over. I am super stoked and super delighted. And this major part of the costume is sorted. And I have no idea what's going to happen up here. There'll be face paint, there'll be glitter. I kind of hope there'll be kind of bits going out with lights on it or something. I haven't sorted any of this, but I just needed to get hold of this so that we could move forward with the project. And the other thing is now, as I said, like in March, I've spent 60 quid on getting a suit for the project, so I have to do it. I've put this project off for one reason or another, valid reasons, for 4 years now. It was meant to be 2020, so 2020, 21, 22, 23. Yeah, so it's 4 years where it hasn't happened. This is the 5th year where it has to happen. And now I've spent money on a suit, so it's further motivation for me to get going. So yeah, as of March, in a weird sort of way, the Throne of Skull project is underway, which is super, super exciting. And then I have no idea what the year's going to hold, but my hope is that around June, July, I get started working on painting the Hobbits and get those painted, and then leave just November to build the board. I think that's the naive hope. So we'll see how far we get with that. But there we go. I thought it'd be fun to check in here from the past and give this idea that the project was very much started back then with this kind of one-off serendipitous find on eBay. And who knows, maybe this is a sign that it's just written in the stars for it all to come together this time. And fingers crossed the project goes off with a bang.
So, with the addition of some face paint and a headdress that my long-suffering mother was currently working on, my firework fancy dress was sorted, and, along with the centrepiece dragon and Gandalf's cart, I now had 3 of my 4 firework elements well underway. However, the last of the 4 was still outstanding, and this was a big deal. The fireworks display, which would form the backdrop of the display board, was a little, how can I put it, non-existent, and I really couldn't put it off any longer. It was time to get stuck in. Way back at the start of the last vlog, I explained how I decided that the backdrop of the display board would be a fireworks display, but exactly how I was going to put that into practice was still really hard to conceive. I had headed off to our local fireworks display in early November to get some inspiration, but as pretty as they were, this inevitably didn't help in any way whatsoever in figuring out how to recreate them out of wood and foam. As mentioned in the last vlog, I'd spent a long time browsing around the internet looking for things I could buy without finding anything suitable. This cool wall-mounted display was the closest thing I found, but it was absolutely massive and, try as I might, I couldn't make it smaller through sheer force of will. In the end, I settled on using strings of flashing multicoloured LEDs to create the effect, but even then, it wasn't at all clear how I would make these LEDs look like a fireworks display. After thinking about it for a while, the first thing I realised was that I was going to need a picture on the backdrop. One thing that I couldn't get away from is that, however cool I made the lights on the backdrop look, after Throne of Skulls, the lights would be off for the vast majority of the time, so I needed to ensure the board and the backdrop looked like a cool firework display, even when the LEDs were turned off. I started by screen grabbing the best quality shot of the film's fireworks display that I could find, and that's the picture that's shown on screen now. This seemed like the most effective way to connect the audience to the correct scene and formed a good starting point. However, as iconic as this was, I couldn't shake the feeling that a movie screenshot wasn't the best way to go. I can't quite explain why, but there was just something that didn't feel quite right to me about having a photo-real image as the backdrop of a miniature display board. So instead, I headed to Photoshop to see what I could come up with. I opened up this movie screenshot and used it as the source image for Photoshop's image generation feature and played around a bit. I used terms like fireworks display, over water, near a forest, without any buildings or people. And, as is so often the case, I was kind of blown away by what the tech can do these days. The first 3, based on the screenshot, are shown here, and, As cool as they were a little too photoreal for me, so I once more adjusted the parameters by changing the output style from photo to artistic. This produced the next two images, which were really cool and looked great, but where the angle was wrong, as they both seemed to be looking down at the field rather than up at the fireworks. To combat this, I changed my search terms to looking up at a fireworks display over water near a forest without any buildings or people, which created the next two images shown here, which I really liked. I was clearly on the right track. After a little more experimentation with the terms, I got to the image shown on screen now, which I was really pleased with. The lake, the trees and the field all looked like they were straight out of the Shire, and I loved the colours of the fireworks in the sky. I had found my backdrop. With my final image selected, I sent it off to my printers, crossing everything that it would look cool. And the resulting print, my friends, was the super exciting tube that I showed off in the last vlog.
But potentially, most interestingly, I've got this. I've got a tube. And inside here is something super, super exciting for later in the project. So I've also got a bit of printing done. All right, girl. It's nice. Yeah, it's nice for them to hear from you. But I've had some printing done, and there's something kind of special wrapped up inside this tube. So that's quite cool as well.
The print was delivered along with this second spare copy that had the job number printed on it, and I was really happy with how it turned out. This was a fairly expensive part of the project, and so I was relieved to see just how well it had turned out. However, despite the fact that the print looked great, I still hadn't quite worked out how I was going to combine the lights with it to make the firework display work. My original plan had been incredibly elaborate. I had intended to cut holes in the print at the centre of each firework burst, and maybe at other strategic places around the bursts. I would then hold the print up against the wooden backboard, draw dots through the holes onto the board, and then drill holes through the dots. Finally, the LED lights would be glued behind the wooden board, carefully poking one LED light through each hole in exactly the right position, and frankly, just kind of hoping this would look great. To be clear, this would involve punching 100 holes in my super expensive art print, hoping none of them ripped the paper, drilling 100 holes in the backboard, and then poking 100 lights into 100 holes, and again, just kinda hoping it would look great. I was really worried about this process, not just for the sheer amount of work it would take, but also because there were so many chances of damaging my single print and destroying the whole project. This was also one of the things I was really worried about in the last vlog, when I was figuring out the correct order in which to assemble the basic frame of the board. If I was going to use this approach, I was going to almost certainly need to drill these holes into the backboard before it was attached to the base frame. Similarly, to then glue the print in place in exactly the right place, with the holes in the print lining up with the holes in the backboard, would mean that I would probably have to glue the print down before the board had been assembled, which would then mean that the expensive, fragile, unique print was already on the board whilst I was doing all the messy filler and paintwork, which filled me with dread. Another issue was that I was also worried that drilling 100 holes in the print would actually just make it look rubbish and completely ruin the effect of the print, particularly when the lights were off. As you can see, even putting aside the amount of work that it would require, I really wasn't keen on this idea at all, but I just couldn't see any other way to make it work. In a slight state of despair and really not wanting to drill 100 holes in my print, I turned a set of my LED lights on and placed the print on top of them, just in case it looked okay. Goodness. So, that was that then. I really couldn't believe how good it looked. I put the drill away, slightly shaking with horror about how close I'd come to drilling 100 holes in the print for absolutely no reason. I had a new plan. If I could come up with some way to fix the print in place with the lights basically touching the back of it, then it seemed as though the lights would look good coming through the paper without the need to cut any holes in the print. Much better. Of course, this introduced new problems. Well, why wouldn't it? In my original plan, the lights would have been fixed behind the wooden backboard, meaning that the print would have been glued flat onto the front of the backboard. Now, with no holes being drilled in anything, the print would be sitting on top of a set of lights, and I really struggled to work out how I could attach the lights to the back of the print whilst also allowing the print to be glued flat. In the end, I came up with the idea of a completely self-contained light box. By gluing a grid of balsa wood strips to a sheet of foam board, I could glue the lights in the recessed space and then glue the print to the balsa wood frame. This would allow the print to effectively lie flat whilst also ensuring that the lights were fixed in place only a few millimetres behind the print. This would also have the benefit of making the fireworks display a completely separate element to the rest of the board. So, if I was careful, I would be able to build the fireworks display away from the messy painting of the board and then just attach it to the rest of the board once it was complete. I'd decided all this weeks before, but as with so much of this project, the creation of the lightbox had been delayed and delayed and delayed to the point where I had nearly run out of time. So, at about 10 PM on Sunday night, we finally got to work on this complicated but incredibly important part of the project. This was another great piece of teamwork, where having Michael made the process far quicker and far more enjoyable than if I had been working alone. Michael used a pin vise to drill pilot holes into the balsa wood strips that he had sprayed black on the previous day, whilst I glued them onto a sheet of foam board and pushed dressmaking pins into the pilot holes to ensure the balsa wood grid dried flush to the foam board. The goal here was to create a grid that would allow the lights to be fed back and forth across the foam board, whilst also ensuring there was as much balsa wood as possible to give the print the biggest possible surface area to adhere to. With the frame complete, we began the incredibly fiddly process of fixing the lights in place. This was another tricky process to conceptualise. Would it be enough to just glue the lights down to the foam board? What if they came loose and all dropped down, bunching at the bottom of the photo box or pushing the print forwards? In the end, I decided to use cable clips to hold the lights in place across the board. This gave me another warm, fuzzy feeling, as I actually had these clips left over from attaching the lights to my Dunharrow board back in 2018, the project that started 6 years of wonderful, all-in adventures for me at Throne of Skulls. Once again, this process would have been incredibly frustrating, if not impossible, without Michael. We got into a great system where I would pull the tack out of the clip with pliers, spray it with superglue activator, while Michael put superglue down on the board, and then, holding the clip with some pliers, I would push the clip into place and hold it down with my other hand. In total, it took us about an hour, but we got there. It was a process that required 4 hands, and would have been excruciating without Michael doing the gluing. In the end, we had 100 LEDs running back and forth across the board, glued in place, and never moving again. Here's hoping they were in the right place. With the lights held in place, it was time to fix the print to the frame. I was worried that PVA or Gorilla Glue might lead to a bubbling effect on the surface, so I sprayed the back of the print with spray mount, pushing it down onto the balsa wood frame, and used dressmaking pins all around the edge to hold it down while it dried. Of course, I wouldn't really know how successful this had been until I switched the lights on. There was a cool mixture of excitement and dread as we approached the big switch on. Everything was completely glued in place, and if it looked awful, there would be absolutely nothing I could do about it. So, I flicked the switch, and boom. That'll do, pig. With the lightbox complete, I couldn't resist sliding it into place, just to check that my measurements had all been correct, and to see how it all looked in situ. It was 1 AM, and we were finally out of time. We popped the board on the table, and had a chat about the process.
It is Sunday night, I think.
Yes.
Monday morning.
Monday morning.
we have come to the end of our sojourn together. So yeah, Sunday night. Throne of Skulls is in 5 days, I guess. So I've got 4 evenings left after this. We've got 1 week. Michael is about to head home. Your time with us is at an end, and this is where the board currently stands. So incredibly productive final evening. Would have been doing everything over voiceover. We haven't recorded many clips to camera, but the filler is down on the board, which is awesome. Michael led on that endeavour. The smoke is now on Smaug, which might be the final smoke or might be added to a bit, but I think it looks pretty cool. And our backdrop is in position. And dare I suggest we do this. I think it looks pretty cool. So that's where we are. That's where we crafted. Michael, how's your weekend?
It's been a fantastic weekend. I mean, when I arrived on Friday, there still seemed a lot to do in terms of where the board was at, and the fact that we were able to work up the dragon himself, even with a little detour that we had to take to get that, and then, as you say, to power on and have what was good, productive Sunday. Worked really well, and we had to do the B-Side live stream on Saturday as well. Or rather, you had to do that
with guest appearance.
So yes, it has been a good 3 days. Best part of 3 days.
I will never stop saying this on any vlog or any video or whenever I see you in person. But thank you so much. It's obviously you've been a massive help. Of course, you've been a massive help. But I think the volume of stuff we've done on this weekend. I don't think. Who knows? At this point, you're seeing this in a month's time, wasn't it? I don't know if it gets finished, but I feel like it might get finished now. And what I came to realise this weekend was if Michael hadn't been here, it wouldn't get finished. There's the doubling up on so many jobs. The braiding. I've never braided LEDs before.
No.
That was exciting. The painting of a dragon, a firework dragon, the smoke effects, the filler. What else? What else did we do?
Well, we did the painting of the dragon as well.
Painting of the dragon, figuring out how the dragon should look, the wrapping the lights around it, all that sort of stuff would have been really, really depressing on my own, if I'm honest. And I don't think I would have got it finished. So Michael hasn't guaranteed it'll get finished, but he's good. He's given it a chance.
Push. And that's been one of the fun things. Is Damian's obviously got this framework of where he wants to get to. So it's having the conversations to try and see that vision and then work out what I can do to help get Damian along that road to visualising it and then having it right in front of us.
Yeah. No, I mean, you've just been incredible. It's so good to have someone else to bounce ideas off. We were saying earlier when we were doing the Lightbox that I've never done this before. I've never hobbied with someone for 48 hours on one project. It's awesome. And it's just super, super cool to have someone else to bounce ideas across and try different approaches and different techniques and stuff. It's been really good fun. So, what's next? I don't want to upset you. I wish you were staying for a week, frankly. But what do we still need to do? We've got to glue sand down next to the... This all looks pretty good, if I'm honest. We've got to glue some sand down on it. Then we've got to paint the sand. And then we've got to dry brush it all. And then texture it. So that's not too bad. Also, the detail stuff, the accessories are not done. These tables are literally brown and they have had a wash. That's it. All those details need to be painted, and all the details on everything else need to be painted. So none of the tents, none of the barrels, none of that are finished. They're all basically undercoated brown, and some of them have been dry brushed, but none of the details have been painted. So that's got to be done. And the good news, we've got one less barrel on here than I was meant to have because we cut it.
Yeah.
So there's a bit less to paint there. Objectives. You glued some sand down on bases for me.
Yes.
The objectives are underway. I haven't done anything on the traps. That's it for the. Is that it for the display board? I think that's easy, isn't it?
We've got the grass bit as well afterwards.
Yeah, and I've got to figure out the hedge.
Yeah.
At the back, yeah, I forgot what the hedge is. But yeah, the board's in pretty good shape. it's worth saying, you will have seen the way it's been edited, there will have been a vlog about me doing all the painting and converting, just like last year, right up to the day. So you will have probably seen me finishing all the Hobbits in a previous vlog. As of right now, all the Hobbits are not finished. Still about 10 Hobbits to finish, which is somewhere in the region of 10 hours of painting. So I've got to squeeze that in as well. But it's alright, because you're watching this in the future, and that got done, didn't it? Past Damian. Yes, the Hobbits got painted. I've told you this before. Of course the Hobbits got painted. The Hobbits are not your problem, Damian. The problem is your hedge. You don't have a hedge, do you? What about your tables, and your tents, and your crockery? They're not painted, are they? No. That's your problem. That's what's going to cost you. But yeah, is that it? Is that everything? I think that's it. I've got some bunting to hang up. I've got to drill into the tents.
In the corners of the tents, yeah. And you got to tidy up and finish the tents as well.
Do you have to go home?
I'm afraid I do.
Well, that's where we are. It's a cracking update, and having Michael Poppins drop in for the weekend and be a massive hit with my kids, and just be the loveliest house guest as ever. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and I cannot wait to hang out with you all weekend in 5 days' time. I'll see you in the pub on Friday night. See you in the pub on Friday night. Oh, mate, I cannot stress how much you are not going to get to the pub on Friday night, you sweet, naive little fool. Make you bored. But there we go. That's where we are. I'm feeling pretty pumped about this. I think it looked kind of cool. And thank you for your help. And we'll see you in the next clip.
Thank you for being a wonderful host.
And so I woke up on Monday morning to find that my terrible dream was true. Michael Poppins had left, and I was on my own. But, unlike Bilbo, there was no adventuring company of dwarfs to follow.
Hello.
I was going to have to clean up the mess on my own. It was Monday, the 25th of November, and I had 5 days until Throne of Skulls. Michael's incredible help had given the project a chance of being finished, but there was still so much to do. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still going to struggle to complete the project alone.
Stone, at your service.
So, we have no heating, we have no hot water. It is the day that we are going to Throne of Skulls. And we're not done.
We're not done.
We're not die.